Hey you guys, welcome back to session 3. In this session, we're going to refine the faces a lot more. Oh, hi kitty. And get them a lot closer to done. And I think in the next session is when we'll be able to really start on the landscape part. So I'm trying to get all these faces videos done because I know a lot of you probably don't want to paint the faces with me because they are really hard to do. But we'll be starting on the landscape really soon. So let's get started. Wait, should we get started? Should we get started? Look at my kitty. She's getting mad. I can promise you that. My video. Don't bite me. Okay, she bit me. So I am gonna work on these faces. And Kitty, do you approve? All right, so here I've got my Alvaro Castagnet brush actually, and I'm just using it to pre-moisten some of this area because I think I'm about to go in with some flesh toned paint to get in just the underlying colors of the man's face. So I'm pre-moistening like I often do. I like this setup. What do you guys think? All right, and then I'm dropping in some color onto his cheek and just kind of letting it radiate out. And this is a combination of Aureolin, Napthol Red, and a little bit of Winsor Violet. And you can see how delicately I'm painting these layers. They're really like glazes of tea consistency paint, and I'll just slowly build up the color in the face on these until I get it to a place that I like it. I'm not trying to rush it because I want these to look right. And I am using my Alvaro Castagnet brush, which if I would have had my silver black velvet round size 8 brush, that would have been the perfect brush for this project. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at my cat. She's like trying to catapult herself over my stuff. Anyway, all right, let's see, what are we doing now? And if you look at the face, there are definitely dark darks, light lights, and medium tones. So just like when you're painting anything else, the human face is the same. You want to get your values right. And I had some of you guys comment on Patreon recently that you were like, I'm not going to tackle human faces yet. I'll stick to cats. But if you have a tracing, that's really going to help a lot. And then no matter what you're painting, whether it's a cat, dog, person, it's just a matter of getting the values in the right place, in the right shape. And keeping with human faces, you have to keep everything smooth. So just keep everything really moist so that you don't get a lot of texture, unlike cat fur. But it's really not a big leap to go from painting a dog or a cat to a human face. They're certainly not any more complicated, and it's just a matter of getting your values right. Now, it is hard to get a likeness sometimes when you're painting a person, but if you're working from a tracing, that should really help. All right, I'm just melting. If you notice what I did there, I put in a dark passage on his cheek and I took it right up into his hair. So you just like any other thing you're painting, you want to connect different parts of the painting together. So if there's a shadow right here on the face, you want to paint it right up into the hairline so they kind of merge together. Like, see this dark part of my glasses? If you were painting this, you would paint this dark part and keep going into my hairline and make it all one shape. You don't paint them separately. So that's something to remember when you're painting cats, dogs, landscapes. Try to find points of connection, and that's why I'm telling you guys always to try to find a way to connect your subject to the background. And in fact, if you guys saw my critique of Deborah Flynn's beautiful horse, she did such a great job. I really think she did great. But I see this a lot with horses, especially like a dark horse. The beginner painter will put the dark horse on a light background and then not connect that dark horse anywhere to the background. So say there's a fence behind that horse, which there is in that reference photo. You can connect the dark parts of the fence to the dark part of the horse and at least find little points of connection. But the more points of connection that you can create in the painting with your subject, the better. So if you have a light area along, say, the rump of the horse, connect it to the light area of the background and just make them almost part of the same shape. Instead of thinking, this is a horse, this is a background. Think like an artist. This is the shape here, which is the rump of the horse, and this is the shape of a cloud behind the horse, but they're both the same values, so they get all put together in the same shape. So that's kind of a way that as an artist you want to switch your thinking from thinking in terms of I'm painting a horse. You want to switch in terms of I'm painting this dark shape. And in this painting, the dark shape on his face is his hairline that goes across here and down the side of his face, and then you can connect it to a dark shadow in his face and make it all kind of come together as one. And when I get the background in, I will work very hard to connect the background to the man. Like a perfect place would be like right here underneath his ear. I could connect that to the hill behind him. Now they're two different colors, yes, but you can scrub them together and just let them kind of blend together. And then voila, you've attached your subject into the painting. And it really helps the subject of the painting not look like a cutout. By the way, if you want me to critique your painting, you would need to move up to the $18 level, and then I offer one critique a month of your paintings. The light's getting pretty in here, isn't it? In a minute, it'll get really bright. Okay, sorry. All right, I've got my scrubber brush there. I'm just scrubbing out some of his beard area. Sit up straight. There, I've got my Simply Simmons. I'm going to go in and add little tiny details to his smile. Get that dark little corner of his mouth really dark. Always try to get these corners really dark and the eyes really dark. Looking on his beard, just putting little tiny strokes for the beard. I'll go in later probably with some ultramarine blue, almost pure ultramarine blue for parts of the beard to put in some of those colorations. It's so scary to put pure ultramarine blue on a face, but if you look at the reference photo, he's got a really cool area in his beard right here. And just make sure, if nothing else with your values, you get these darks really dark. That's one thing I think, Deborah Flynn, you did great in your horse picture that you did. You improved from the, and I've seen other students do this too. In the first painting you did of the Frisian, it was not a lot of difference in values within the horse, but in the painting that you did for your client, you got your lights, your darks, and your mediums, so that really looked good. So that's a step up in the right direction. Now I'm painting his lip, and really it's just one little line. I need to get my reference photo up so I can see. And you can see the top lip, and this is often true, especially if the picture is taken outside. The top lip will be darker because the light is coming down and hitting this lip, which gets more light because it's on the bottom and it's reflecting up towards the sky. So this lip will be lighter. And that's certainly true in this reference photo. You notice their top lip is darker and cooler, and the bottom lip is pinker and lighter. And a lot of times the bottom lip will have a highlight, like almost a white area that you can leave as a perfect white highlight. All right, so I painted in this little part of his crease in his cheek, and then I dotted at it to soften it. And then you can let that area dry a little bit and then go in with a tiny little bit, just a slightly damp brush, and just kind of brush over it really delicately to re-soften everything. I need more coffee. More coffee. I'm gonna go get more coffee. Is anything happening yet? If you are painting a really detailed face like this and you put down a mark and you see that it's wrong, all you have to do, you can actually flood the area with a big old drop of water and then just blot it all up. So if you make a mistake and you see it was a mistake right away and your paint's still really wet, just go in with a brush load full of water and slam it on there and just put the dot on, and then just blot it up with a paper towel or a dry brush or whatever you have handy, or just wipe it away. You can do that. And I think I saw me just do that. I put a dot in the corner of his mouth. I didn't like it. I put in a brush load of water and just dabbed it right back up. So that's really easy to do. I'm gonna go get my coffee. One thing that my husband brought to the marriage was a cappuccino machine, and I thought he was nuts for having a cappuccino machine. But now I'm addicted, and if I'm anywhere when I'm traveling that doesn't have cappuccino, I die a little bit inside in the morning. Here I'm using my Simply Simmons size 0, and now I would be using my silver black velvet brush. And by the way, I learned about these silver black velvet brushes on the watercolor forums on Facebook, and I learned something new every day on these watercolor groups I'm a part of, and also the gardening groups I'm a part of. And I've always found them to be so invaluable. And when I first started painting, I joined a little Yahoo group back in the day, and they really helped me learn how to sell my art online. It was so invaluable. By the way, if you guys would like some videos on how to sell art, how to ship art, how to build your art business, I would love to talk about that. I love talking about that stuff, but you guys just have to let me know. I don't want to make videos you guys aren't interested in, but I've been selling my art for 20 years, had some really good times, especially when the economy was good. And lately my prints have been selling great, so I'd love to talk to you guys about that. You just have to ask me questions so I know what you want me to tell you about. But I'd be happy to do that. All right, this is a really scary section where I'm painting under his nose, but look in the reference photo how dark it is under his nose. So you gotta go dark. If the reference photo says to go dark, you gotta go dark. And sometimes if a shadow is completely pitch black, especially like in a landscape, you don't have to go completely pitch black. You just have to get it good and dark. But indeed, this does need to be pretty good and dark under his nose. And it's scary to paint those dark shadows on the face, but trust me, in the end, they will look right. Go back and look at some of Leonardo da Vinci's studies of faces, and think about it in terms of looking at the values. And Rembrandt's, the values, it's all about the values. In Rembrandt pieces of art, Leonardo da Vinci, they really get the contrast popping in those paintings and drawings that they did. And they make their subjects look so three-dimensional because they almost overemphasize the values, and they get their lights really light and their darks really darks, and they have the medium tones, but they really pop them out. We'll have to look at those. We need to do a little tutorial where we just look at some art and say what would Leonardo da Vinci do in this situation. And I'm happy with where this painting is, as far as I feel like I definitely have the main areas of focus in the right spots, and they're looking good, they're hanging together well. Now I can go in and really paint the darks to really pop out the shapes. And this woman particularly has a really dark area of hair that's framing her face beautifully right under her ear. So I'm carefully going in there and getting that really dark to start building up my darks that will really give their faces some dimension. That's what Leonardo da Vinci would do. I'm thinking to myself, do I want to put that hair that's blowing across her face right now, or do I want to worry about it later? So I'm giving myself that option. That's why I'm painting in these weird stripes, because if you look at the reference photo, there's actually hair going across her face so delicately, and I'm so afraid to get her face beautiful and then paint this scraggly piece of hair that doesn't look good, because it would look good if you could get that hair delicately going across her face. So I still, as of this video, I still haven't figured out, am I going to do that? Am I going to paint hair across her face when it looks so good? But here I'm trying to give myself that option and paint it in like there is a hair going across her face. So I was like, I'll make that hard decision later. But I do like how see how that little bit of dark under her ear really popped her face out already? It just adds so much dimension. And you beginners, I know you're afraid of painting faces, but get your values dark and get your shapes right from your tracing. Use your tracing to really get your shapes correct. And then when you pop out those light against dark areas, it just looks so good. It'll make you look so pro if you get your values right. Get those darks really dark against those lights. It'll look good. Just remember to paint very detailed. Where there's a very light area against a very dark area, whether it's a nose, a whisker, an ear, whatever it is, make sure you get that light shape really right. I like how it's looking though. I love how that dark makes it look so good. By the way, I should say, for her hair, I used burnt sienna, and to darken it, I put in a bit of ultramarine blue. If it looks like it needs to be redder because she's kind of a redhead, you could put in a little bit more red, a little bit more aureolin, and you just keep mixing it on your palette until you like the color and you think it looks right. That's why it's so useful to have a white palette, because the white palette will help you mix your colors and make sure they're the right color before you put them on your painting. But she definitely has a lot of burnt sienna in that hair. When you're painting hair, this is the thing. You do not want to think in terms of painting individual hairs. You want to think like an artist and think about shapes. So in this painting, she's got this patch right here that kind of goes over, and it's kind of like almost like a triangle oval shape of hair right here where the light's shining on her head right here. And then there's a dark line this way. So you want to look at those shapes and patterns and paint the larger shapes in the hair, especially first. Later on, you can put in a couple little rivulets of single or smaller strands, but think in terms of painting the larger shapes in the hair and really getting those in, and not thinking in terms of I'm painting hair. Deborah Flynn, for that horse that you painted, the horse's tail has this big whoosh. So you could paint that in terms of looking at that as a shape, a big black dark shape, and paint that shape instead of painting a tail. All right, now this side of her hair is in shadow. It's cooler, meaning it's bluer and much darker. So I add burnt sienna to my mix to paint this dark side of her hair. And then the white of the man's ear is up against a really dark area of her hair. So that has to be painted really carefully. And so I'm really taking my time in this area because I want to get that light against that dark looking really good. And then as it goes up towards the light, it gets lighter. So it's more burnt sienna, less ultramarine blue in your mix. And you see there's a dark wave coming through her part, along her forehead, and down over her ear. That's all one shape. That should all be painted together. I'm working on this little crease in his cheek again. I'm thinking it looks really good. And pay attention to those crease colors, because on this side of his face, it's more Windsor violet. On this side, it's more orangish. It's a lot warmer on this side because this side of his face is in shadow. So be sure that you get this cooler and this warmer, and that will really add a look of realism to your painting. See how I'm going in again and again? As these little corners dry, they lighten. And then I go back in and I put in another little bit of dab of dark in these corners. And I keep going back. As they dry, I go back in and I add another glaze of dark over those corners. So I keep building those darks up until they can't get any darker. Do you see how I painted the rivers of value in her hair? Instead of painting individual strands, I focused on painting the river. Don't paint the strand, paint the river. I hope that makes sense. I'm just going in and painting some of these darker under his cheek colors. And then, so I'll paint in some tea to milk consistency color. So here's a tea to milk consistency color, and then right above that I'll go back in with a clear water, not a drip of clear water, but just kind of a damp brush, and paint along the edges of that to soften out the edges of whatever I just painted. So that's especially true when you're painting faces. When you paint a darker medium tone and you want the boundaries of it, the edges of it to be soft and smooth, you go back in and paint with clear water. Paint into the edges with a damp clear water brush. Does that make sense? I don't know. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. I'm just putting in tiny little details of his ear, keeping it very delicate, because that is a white area against a very dark area. So again, just remember, those are the areas you really need to pay attention to, because the eye is going to be drawn to them. I've said that over and over again. It must be important since I'm saying it over and over again. And then I'll take a break and get coffee. I need more coffee. I need more coffee. Ow! Oh, she just bit me. Did you see that? That wasn't nice. My kitty. Ow! Now she's biting my toe. She's mad at me. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed session 3. I certainly did. And in the next session, I'm going to talk to you guys about how to start the background. So we're going to start the background next, and we're going to do the sky. And the sky in this one is really fun to do with watercolor because it's kind of a brooding gray, soft sky day. That rhymed. That was so cool. I didn't plan that. Anyway, it's really fun to paint a sky like this because it's so simple and it'll look really good, I think. So I will see you in the next session when we work on the landscape a little bit. Bye, guys.